I forget, why'd the guy shoot you 9 times? Was it drugs or something?
He was paid to do it.
He was paid to do it?
Yeah.
Who would want to shoot you?
Why were you targeted?
You're such a good guy.
It's my past.
It was a drug thing?
No,
like a business thing?
It's karma.
Karma?
Karma?
Explain to me again why this guy was hired to shoot you 9 times.
Well, you was paid because someone, felt like that I would potentially do something to them if they kept going in the direction that they were going.
Man, you are tough.
Did you ever find out who did it?
Yeah, I knew who did it shortly after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they are now where?
Oh, the guy who actually shot me is dead. And the guy who paid him got life in jail.
Got life in jail.
Yeah.
50 Cent finally blew the lid off and exposed the man who pumped 9 bullets into his body, the hit that completely flipped his life upside down. Before Curtis James Jackson became the mogul we know today, he was just another young hustler trying to survive in the unforgiving streets of South Jamaica, Queens, where every corner had danger waiting. Back in the 1980s, the crack epidemic was turning neighborhoods into war zones, and a young 50 was caught right in the middle of it. By just 12 years old, he was already knee-deep in street hustling, moving product, and learning how to play the game fast. This wasn't about rap dreams back then. It was about survival. Without a mother who tragically passed when he was only 8 and never really knowing his father, 50 found role models in the men who ran the blocks. The so-called street legends of South Jamaica became the blueprint he studied. And at the top of that food chain was none other than Kenneth Supreme McGriff. If you were in Queens back then, that name alone could make your heart skip a beat. Supreme wasn't just feared, he was respected like royalty in the streets, the kind of figure who seemed untouchable. He had the cars, the cash, the soldiers, and the type of influence that made law enforcement sweat just hearing his name. Supreme rolled with his infamous crew, the Supreme Team, a tight-knit empire running South Jamaica's powder game like a full-blown corporation. Customers lined up right there in the neighborhood, and everyone knew not to cross them unless you wanted serious problems. To a young 50, Supreme looked larger than life, almost like a villain straight out of a movie, but with real power, real money, and real blood on his hands. And it's from here, in the shadow of Supreme's empire, that 50's story of bullets, betrayal, and survival really begins. At its prime, the Supreme Team was raking in a jaw-dropping $200,000 a day. Cash so crazy it sounded like movie money, but this was real life. Supreme might not have been El Chapo, but in Queens, he ran things like a boss and every other crew on the block knew it. His empire had the streets on lock and jealousy was everywhere because everyone wanted a piece of that kind of paper. Under Supreme's command, the squad blew up into a massive operation with hundreds of members. Dealers, enforcers, shooters, you name it. And trust me, you didn't want to play games with the Supreme Team. Some of these dudes weren't just tough talkers, they were stone-cold killers with reputations that spread far beyond Queens. Among the heavy hitters were B, Righteous, Baby Wise, Gerald Prince Miller, Supreme's own cousin, and the one everybody just knew as Black Just. Now here's where it gets deep. Black Just wasn't just another street soldier, he was like the big brother 50 Cent never had. He looked out for him, made sure he didn't get lost in the madness. Black Just even bought young 50 his very first motorcycle and got him into a boxing gym to channel that raw energy, so when 50 wasn't throwing punches in the ring, he was in the basement, spitting rhymes, learning how to make beats with friends on old turntables. That's where the seeds of his rap career really started to sprout. By the mid-90s, 50 was already locked in on music, and in 1996, his world changed when a friend introduced him to Jam Master Jay of Run DMC fame. Jay became his mentor, teaching him how to build songs, how to write a beat, how to count bars and create hooks that hit hard. This was a whole different type of hustle. Hip-hop was becoming his way out. But here's the twist. 50 wasn't the only one catching that rap fever. Supreme himself got bit by the bug too. After being arrested in 1987 for running a criminal enterprise, Supreme took a 12-year sentence, but he slid out in 1994 after serving just 5 years, walking straight back into the block at the height of the golden age of hip-hop. And when Supreme came home, he didn't just want back in the game, he wanted the streets and the music. By the late 90s, hip-hop wasn't just music, it was the biggest movement in the country, shaping culture coast to coast. And Supreme, fresh out the game, saw his golden ticket. He wanted to ditch the risky street hustle and flip the script, clean money, fresh power, and a whole new identity in the spotlight. So what did he do? Supreme locked arms with one of the most dominant labels of the era, Murder Inc. Records. At the time, Murder Inc. wasn't just hot, they were untouchable, dropping back-to-back hits that had radio, clubs, and MTV on fire. Irv Gotti, the mastermind behind the label, was steering the ship like a true architect of sound, and his lineup was stacked. We're talking Black Child, Charlie Baltimore, Ashanti, and of course, the chart-dominating Ja Rule. With Supreme backing them, Murder Inc. didn't just have star power, they had street armor. His presence gave the label an edge that rival crews couldn't touch, and it instantly boosted their street cred. At that point, Ja Rule was everywhere. Chart-topping singles, packed shows, Hollywood cameos. He was one of the hottest rappers alive. Supreme's move into music looked like pure genius. But just when everything seemed picture perfect, cracks started to show. In 1999, Ja Rule got caught slipping during a music video shoot. His chain was snatched by a guy named Troy, and word spread fast in the streets. Troy supposedly did it because he believed Ja had been messing with his wife. A scandal like that could have crushed Ja's image, but Supreme swooped in, flexing his muscle. He used his connections to track down the chain and return it, proving to everyone that Murder Inc. had serious protection behind the scenes. But that's when fate dropped gasoline on the fire. Not long after, Ja Rule spotted Troy talking to none other than 50 Cent inside a club. According to 50, that's the exact moment the fuse was lit.
A friend of mine's robbed Ja Rule. And I'm in a club, and I see the nigga, I'm like, hey, what's up? You know, we chilling. He see me kicking it with the nigga that robbed him, and he feel like, oh shit, I shouldn't speak to this dude because I know the kid robbed him, but I know this kid, I grew up with him.
From that night forward, a beef started brewing that would turn into one of the ugliest and most legendary wars hip-hop had ever seen. Ja Rule became convinced that 50 Cent was somehow part of the setup when his chain got snatched. In his eyes, 50 wasn't just chilling with Troy, he was plotting right along with him. But 50 kept it cool, brushing off the whispers and saying he was only hanging with Troy because they were homies from the block. Still, let's be real. It was bold, almost reckless, for 50 to even be in that mix. Think about it. At that moment, 50 Cent was just an underground rapper barely getting traction on Columbia Records, while Ja Rule was already a platinum-selling superstar with the full force of Murder Inc. and half the industry backing him. On paper, it wasn't even a fair fight. One guy had a machine behind him, the other had nothing but street smarts, raw talent, and a chip on his shoulder. Now, here's where it gets messy. Ja Rule swore up and down that he never even saw 50 chilling with Troy. According to him, their beef didn't start from the chain snatching. It started when 50 showed up to the set of Murder Inc.'s Murder for Life video and got the cold shoulder from the entire crew. That shoot went down after the Troy drama, and the timing was way too suspicious to ignore. So which story is true? The truth's probably lost in the smoke, but either way, sparks were flying. And when it came to disrespect, 50 wasn't the type to stay quiet. Before making any wild moves, he supposedly sat down with Supreme to get some clarity. Word on the street is Supreme told him straight, leave that little dude alone. This is my business. But instead of cooling things off, it just made the fire hotter. 50 doubled down and started calling out the entire Murder Inc. camp by name. Ya, Irv Gotti, everybody. He wasn't just taking shots. He was trying to shake the whole empire from the ground up. And soon, fate made sure the two rivals would meet face to face. The battleground, the Swiss Hotel in Atlanta, where both Ja Rule and 50 Cent were booked for the same show, and that's where things turned explosive. 50's manager Chaz Williams thought maybe, just maybe, a sit-down between him and Ja Rule could squash all the drama. A little peace talk, maybe even a handshake. But instead of cooling things off, the moment turned into straight chaos. What was supposed to be a heart-to-heart ended in fists flying, and the unthinkable happened. 50 snatched Ja Rule's chain right off his neck, and he didn't keep it quiet either. 50 wasted no time clowning Ja in front of the whole rap world. He dropped a diss track called Your Life's on the Line, and in the music video, he pulled one of the coldest, most humiliating stunts in hip-hop history, rocking Ja Rule's chain like it was his own. Fans couldn't believe their eyes, and the streets went wild talking about it. Eventually, Supreme managed to track the chain down and return it to Ja Rule, but not before 50 scored himself a flashy watch out of the deal. Still, the damage was done. That video became a legendary moment, forever remembered as the ultimate slap in the face, and for Ja Rule, that kind of public humiliation was unforgivable. From there, the war only got uglier. Murder Inc. tried to use their industry muscle to choke out 50's career, blackballing him from radio, labels, and major platforms. For a while, it really did slow him down, but 50 wasn't backing off. Then came March 24th, 2000, the night things exploded once again. Both 50 and Ja Rule ended up inside the legendary Hit Factory studios in New York. They were working in separate rooms, but when Ja heard 50 was in the building, he couldn't resist stirring the pot. Even though Ja was on crutches at the time, he convinced his crew to run up on 50 and his boys. What followed was a brutal showdown, a full-blown brawl between 50 Cent's squad and Murder Inc. soldiers like Black Child. Punches thrown, blood spilled, chaos everywhere. It was no longer just a rap beef, it was a war spilling out into the streets and studios alike. In the chaos of that Hit Factory showdown, the man who did the most damage was none other than Black Child, the same dude who ended up stabbing 50 Cent in the dark.
Is when you see a nigga in the fucking studio or wherever, and the nigga wanna talk, and niggas is like, nah, ain't nothing to talk about, right? It's like 5 of us and 5 of them, and niggas is getting it on and fighting and bang. Some way, somehow, the lights got hit off, and this was getting it on in the door.
But 50, stubborn and fearless, toughed it out and lived to tell the tale. Black Child landed behind bars for the incident, and the courts even hit Murder Inc. with a restraining order, keeping them away from 50 for his safety. But here's the catch. This move had the streets buzzing. Whispers spread fast that 50 might be snitching, which is poison for a rapper trying to keep street credibility. Yet that wasn't even the real problem. What truly flipped the streets, and especially Supreme against 50, was when he dropped the infamous track Ghetto Quran. That song shook Queens to its core. In the track, 50 name-dropped major drug dealers, hustlers, and crime bosses from South Jamaica. To outsiders, it sounded like storytelling, but to the streets, it felt like exposing secrets that weren't supposed to leave the block. Suddenly, people weren't just seeing 50 as a rapper calling out other artists. He was dragging street business into the spotlight for the feds and the world to hear. 50 defended himself, saying it wasn't snitching. He claimed he was honoring the OGs, documenting their legacy in rap, but Supreme wasn't buying it. To him, it was betrayal, plain and simple, and that was the last straw. Word is, Supreme decided it was time to shut 50 down permanently. He allegedly dropped $25,000 on a hit to erase the problem once and for all. And then came the day that changed everything, May 24th, 2000. Around noon, 50 was outside his grandmother's house with his friend Curtis Brown, who was driving, and Curtis's girlfriend sitting up front. 50 chilled in the back seat, planning to head out when Curtis reminded him to grab his diamond pen. So 50 stepped out, pen in hand, piece tucked just in case, and started walking back to the car. That's when he spotted another vehicle creeping down the block. At first, he brushed it off, not thinking too hard about it, but the second he slid back into the car, gunfire erupted. Bullets tore through 50's body like a storm. His face, arms, legs, hip, even his chest were hit. One bullet shattered his jaw, leaving his tongue swollen. Another busted his leg. He even lost a wisdom tooth in the madness.
Garden, and I walked over here to sit in the actual vehicle that my friend was waiting for me in, and the car pulled up. On the side of us, a guy got out the passenger seat of that car, came around behind it, and shot through that.
9 shots in total, and yet somehow he survived. And the wildest part, that wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of 50 Cent's rebirth. Those 9 bullets didn't just scar 50 Cent's body, they changed his voice forever. That slurred, gritty delivery we all recognize today. It came straight from the damage he suffered that day. After clinging to life, 50 spent 13 long days in the hospital, stitched up, wired shut, fighting through the pain until the doctors finally released him back into the world. And when the streets found out who was behind the shooting, jaws dropped. The trigger man was none other than Daryl Homicide Baum, a man with ties to boxing legend Mike Tyson. He had even worked as Tyson's bodyguard. But here's the twist. 50 wasn't the only target. Supreme allegedly ordered multiple hits around that same time, going after names like E-Money Bags and Big Nose Troy, leaving chaos and blood on Queens' streets. But even kings fall. By 2001, Supreme's empire came crumbling down when he was hit with a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The man who once ran Queens like a boss was now locked in a cell forever. As for 50, Surviving those bullets was a blessing and a curse. At first, it felt like everything was slipping away. Columbia Records dropped him, branding him too dangerous, too much trouble for the industry to handle. That was a gut punch, rock bottom for a man who had already stared death in the face. But if there's one thing about 50 Cent, it's that he doesn't fold. He fights back. Once he healed up, he locked himself in the studio with a hunger the world had never seen. He started flooding the streets with mixtapes, and then came the game changer. Guess Who's Back? A tape so raw, so unapologetic, that it forced people to pay attention. And the buzz reached the ears of none other than Eminem. The moment M heard 50, he knew this was something special. He brought him into the Shady Records family, and from there, a whole new chapter opened up. With Dr. Dre co-signing and Eminem backing him, 50 went from almost dead in Queens to sitting on top of the rap world. And he's never looked back since. 50 Cent's survival wasn't just luck, it was destiny. After shaking off the bullets and the industry shutting its doors on him, he came back harder than ever, determined to prove he couldn't be stopped. With Eminem and Dr. Dre in his corner, 50 finally had the backing he needed to flip his street credibility into mainstream dominance. And that's exactly what he did. In 2003, he unleashed Get Rich or Die Tryin', an album that didn't just make noise, it shook the entire music industry. The project was raw, authentic, and full of the pain and hunger that came from living through those battles in Queens. Tracks like Many Men told the world exactly what he had survived, while In Dog Club became an instant anthem, blasting out of every speaker, every party, every radio station worldwide. The album debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200, selling over 872,000 copies in its first week alone, numbers almost unheard of at the time. And just like that, 50 Cent went from being blackballed by the industry to being its biggest new superstar. The man who had been left for dead was suddenly the hottest name in hip-hop, rewriting the rulebook on how to turn street trauma into chart-topping power. But it wasn't just the music. 50 built an empire. He launched G Unit, bringing his crew into the spotlight, and together they flooded the charts with hits. His image, bulletproof vest, bandana, fearless attitude, made him larger than life, a symbol of survival and dominance all at once. What made 50's rise even more legendary was the fact that his enemies had tried to silence him, yet every shot, every betrayal, every obstacle only pushed him higher. From hustling in South Jamaica to being shot 9 times to standing at the top of the rap game, his story wasn't just about music, it was about resilience. 50 Cent didn't just get rich, he built an empire off the very pain that was meant to destroy him, and that's why his rise will always be remembered as one of the greatest comebacks in hip-hop history. 50 Cent's story is nothing short of legendary. From hustling as a kid in Queens, to beefing with the biggest names in the game, to surviving 9 shots and turning his scars into superstardom, his journey proves that nothing can hold back pure determination. Every setback, every betrayal, and every bullet aimed at him only fueled his rise to the top. Think about it, most people would have quit after losing a record deal, or after taking 9 bullets, or after being blackballed by an entire industry. But 50? He flipped every single one of those obstacles into motivation. That's why his name still rings bells today, not just as a rapper, but as a businessman, actor, and cultural icon. His survival wasn't just about living, it was about dominating the very world that tried to bury him. So now the big question is, what's your take on 50's life and how he conquered all those challenges? Do you think his survival was fate, or was it just sheer toughness and willpower? Let us know what you think in the comments below. We want to hear your perspective on one of hip-hop's wildest stories. And if you rocked with this breakdown, don't forget to smash that like button, drop a comment, and hit subscribe so you never miss out on the rawest celebrity and hip-hop stories we've got coming your way. We've got plenty more drama, beef, and untold tales straight from the culture that you do not want to miss. And before you click away, make sure you check out the next video that's about to pop up on your screen. Trust me, it's packed with even more crazy celebrity drama you'll want to dive right into. We'll catch you in the next one.